Yeah, I mean, I do feel really optimistic.
Things are changing. It's coming, and it's coming with our next generation.
There's a sort of a new way of farming emerging where wildlife has its place.
Across most of the UK, nature has declined, mainly due to changes in how land is farmed. On Dartmoor, a new generation of farmers are doing things differently.
The passion is there to save it. I do see more wildlife when I'm out and about. It's incredible.
If more farmers prioritise nature, threatened species could be saved and Dartmoor would become a vital refuge for wildlife. The open moorland feels like the wildest part of Dartmoor. But actually, it's a landscape created by centuries of grazing. Vegetation was once more varied, with plenty of heather, bilberry and scattered trees. Over the last 50 years, that's changed, with coarse grasses taking over. Climate change and air pollution may have contributed, but many believe that a major cause is grazing high numbers of sheep over winter.
The problem that everybody has with sheep is they are just left alone in huge amounts of space where they just walk through and pick what they want to eat, which then kills the biodiversity. You end up with just a couple of species growing that they don't want to eat.
Keeping too many sheep on the moors has stopped trees and shrubs from regenerating and resulted in fewer wildflowers. Grazing a mixture of animals would allow a greater diversity of plants to return.
In the past, there weren't any sheep, but there were wild cattle, wild ponies, wild boar. They're the sort of things which the wildlife in this country evolved with. And so when areas are grazed by those animals in a low intensity way, the wildlife flourishes.
Grazing fewer sheep and more cattle is exactly what farmer John Malseed is doing.
The cattle we have are native bred cattle from the area, so they're used to the hardy weather of Dartmoor.
John is working with Natural England and the National Park, who provide virtual fence collars for his cattle, which means that he can programme where they graze.
We've drawn a virtual fence just on through Google Maps, so there is no physical fence there. They'll come along and they'll hear this high-pitched noise, and they'll know that there is a fence line here, and if I continue, they'll get a small shock. So they'll naturally just steer away from any high-pitched noises and stay in the pasture where you want them to graze.
John's highly targeted grazing is reducing the dominance of coarse grasses and increasing heather and bilberry. It's also helping to enlarge a very precious remnant of Atlantic rainforest, Wistman's Wood.
Natural England and the Duchy of Cornwall want to expand Wistman's Wood, and if the cattle are coming near Wistman's Wood, they're eating the saplings that are trying to grow up through. So by having the no fence collars, it works really well because we can keep the cattle up here grazing, but keep them out of the woodland so the new saplings can come up and establish. And on the side of it, we still have a financially viable cattle enterprise.
More trees and shrubs and a greater range of flowering plants will transform these increasingly grassy uplands, benefiting wildlife, visitors and livestock.
The biodiversity of our moorlands is on the increase because of what we're doing. Vegetation's in full flower, birds singing. It's heaven.
John's work will also help one of Dartmoor's most iconic international travellers. Every spring, cuckoos fly all the way from Africa to stake out territories in this scrubby habitat.
When they return in the spring, they need caterpillars. Those caterpillars thrive in rough grassland amongst scrub.
As well as caterpillars, this mosaic of bushes and grasses attracts a bird that's crucial for cuckoo survival. Cuckoos trick other birds into rearing their young, and on Dartmoor they lay their eggs in the nests of meadow pipits. Trees provide vital perches to spot nests from. If farmers like John can restore more trees on the moor, it will support not just cuckoos, but many other species missing from these hills. Below the moorland, Dartmoor is a patchwork of small fields, hedgerows and ancient woods. Here, wildlife has also declined. After the war, many fields were ploughed, reseeded and fertilised to favour just a few types of fast-growing grasses for livestock. Seb Powell does things differently.
We don't use any chemicals, any fertilisers, no wormers, and very minimal, just when required, antibiotics.
Seb's fields are productive even without fertiliser. That's largely because he mob grazes them.
We literally spend our time tending to the cows, herding them, so that they're in sort of smaller groups, and then their effect is more intense and they're depositing more nutrients in more concentrated sort of small areas as we rotate around the farm.
Unlike more intensive farms which rely on grain-based compound feed to fatten animals quickly, Seb's cattle are 100% pasture-fed. To make the pasture even more nutritious and better for wildlife, he increases the range of plants growing in them.
As cows, they want to browse different species of grass and different species of legumes and herbs, or even hedgerows or forest edges. So we plant herbal lays. It's like a salad bar for cattle. There's plantain, there's clover, there's different grasses and there's herbs in there. And then we also encourage species diverse meadows to basically flourish on the farm.
Jenny Morris has also been restoring meadow diversity. Like Seb, she uses mob grazing.
Howdy bees! Now girls!
But on her farm it's mostly with sheep.
Our sheep are kept in a bigger flock, tighter together, and I move them very often. So at this time of year I would move them every couple of days, and then they don't return to that pasture again for, weeks, months sometimes.
The meadows are given enough time between grazing to regrow, so the grass grows tall and rare wildflowers can bloom.
Every year there's something new and something different in each field.
An orchid. I've never seen them up this side of the field before.
Oh, they just bring joy, don't they? It means something's going right underneath. The soil's regenerating, the pasture's regenerating.
Some of Jenny's fields won't be grazed, they'll be cut for hay in late summer. These hay meadows are wonderful for wildlife. They can have up to 50 species of plants and are home to butterflies, bees and a huge variety of other bugs.
What's not to be excited about hay meadow is the colour and the vibrancy and the diversity. People go and see mountains and go and see lakes and lochs and all sorts for wow factors, but when you walk through a proper hay meadow and you hear how many things and see how many beings are thriving off it, it's the biggest awe to me in my farming calendar.
Just as important as Dartmoor's fields are the hedgerows that separate them. Seb's convinced that they shouldn't be trimmed right back, as many farmers do every year.
There's many benefits to having big bushy hedges. First and foremost, our cattle will browse a lot of the species to be found in the hedge, as do we. Like we eat the blackberries when they come out, as do the other species or wildlife which like the berries and different flowers that are in the hedge. The hedge has so many different benefits.
If we ever get a north wind, this is brilliant. So there's shelter here for the cows. And the trees here is shelter from the southwesterly wind. And equally in the summer, there'll be some shade. So the higher the hedges I see it, is actually more beneficial.
And on top of that, we get firewood from the hedge.
Before we farmed the landscape, there would have been scrub interconnecting all the areas of southern England. So once the landscape was divided up into fields, the hedges then became corridors really for wildlife to move around. So if they're in good condition, if the hedgerows are rich, they're not cut back too much and tidied, then there's more wildlife that can live in them and more wildlife that can move around.
Hedges and scrub have another value: nurseries for new trees that grow up through them, a free way to increase trees across the farm.
This is just sort of a natural regeneration out of the hedge, isn't it? It's quite nice. The oaks, the little oaks, love finding a little place in there. They're protected and they get going.
The trees will actually make the farm more productive, and they'll help to retain water, protect slopes that might have otherwise been, exposed to the rain or the wind.
Trees are a very big part of our farm. For shade, shelter, soil health. It's always so lush next to the treed hedgerows. The grass is always so thick.
Taller hedges are one thing, but letting vegetation spread outward from the hedges to become scrub is a step too far for many farmers.
I think scrub is great just because it adds diversity to the farm. It adds another habitat which, is in between woodland, hedge and meadow.
And it's those edges which are always the richest areas for wildlife. So having bits of invading scrub into fields around the edges, having been a bit rough and a little bit untidy, having untidy corners, is really beneficial for a lot of things.
Thanks to all their scrub, both Seb and Jenny's farms are home to many birds that rely on this habitat, such as stonechats, willow warblers and the elusive garden warbler.
When I realised there was garden warblers here, I became a little obsessed at trying to find one. But I can't see him. I can never see him.
The garden warbler was once a widespread bird right across southern England, but now has declined enormously because it likes scrub, and scrub's often seen as, looked upon as something which is a bit untidy. But for birds like a garden warbler, they absolutely love it.
It's great, I think, when you come to the realisation that you don't have to be a tidy farmer. The farm maybe looks messy, but we've allowed space for nature. We've allowed another food source for cattle.
Being a nature-friendly farmer isn't just about the plants in your fields, it's about the water in them too. Traditionally, farmers drained their wettest fields. Seb's doing the opposite, digging ponds and scrapes to make them marshier.
We've made a conscious effort to allow some areas of bog or, wetland. Maybe the cattle can drink from them in a dry summer. Maybe it's a little habitat for more tadpoles, for more species to go to.
Rewetting more of this landscape would allow a multitude of rare plants and animals to thrive, including a Dartmoor speciality, the marsh fritillary butterfly. It would also protect and sustain life outside the national park's boundaries by improving the water quality of rivers that flow from it.
Yeah, so having these bogs and anything we can do to slow the water down is really good for the river. Less river water building up and changes in different water levels can only be a good thing. And it obviously benefits the farm as well, because we like the water to stay on the farm.
By holding on to water for longer, farms become more drought resistant and their precious soil isn't eroded away. For the rivers, this means less flooding after storms and higher water levels during dry spells, making them a better home for wildlife.
Dartmoor's rivers are renowned for their wildlife, particularly things like dippers, grey wagtails. Will wander along in the spring, and there'll be really good numbers of these birds. Otters still survive in good numbers because there's lots of trout.
The nature-friendly, regenerative approach championed by these pioneering farmers is already helping wildlife to recover. Supporting them by buying their meat instead of the more intensively reared alternatives can help to restore Dartmoor and many other cherished British landscapes.
We are not just farmers, we're custodians of the land, and without farmers it wouldn't look the way it does, nor have the biodiversity.
If more farmers can make nature a priority, a flourishing, wild and productive future awaits.
I do get huge waves of, wow, look what I'm doing, and huge wave of, wow, look what I'm doing, can I do this? It's quite a pressure to get it right and to protect it.
I love being a Dartmoor farmer. I think it's perfect. It's the ultimate job, really. There's a lot of solace in knowing that what you're doing is having some direct positive benefit, A, to people, and B, to the natural environment and wildlife.